Well, with just 2 weeks left in President Trump's term, demonstrators took to the U.S. Capitol to protest the results of the presidential election as members of Congress met to certify Joe Biden's win. And as we all know, chaos ensued with property destruction, violence, and mayhem in the halls of Congress, leaving 5 people dead. This un-American attack on the seat of democracy should truly horrify us all. Recently, I spoke to former member of Congress Doug Collins of Georgia about where do we go from here. It was a crazy week in our nation's capital, Congressman, and I think all of us were embarrassed by some of the actions that we saw with what is simply a riot. React to what happened. What do you feel happened Wednesday that set us back?
Well, I think the whole event of Wednesday set us back. I think it was just the attitude that of what we saw, the lawlessness, the rioting, the disregard for other people, the disregard for our Constitution, the disregard for the very building that I used to work in. And seeing that happen was just devastating. And it has a moment in which you just look at it, and it's one of those kind of moments that you remember. It was like in traumatic experiences, you're going to sit back, and I think the country will remember this date and the images that came out of there. It was very disturbing. It had nothing to do with peaceful protest. It had nothing to do at the end of the time with making a First Amendment case. This was just lawlessness and needs to be prosecuted.
I've been troubled when I've heard people try to compare what was done Wednesday with the founders and the American Revolution. I thought these people Wednesday were not patriots. They were a mob, and they had no plan. If they had taken over the Capitol, what were they going to do with it? It was like the dog chasing the car. They didn't know what to do if they ever caught it. It was an embarrassment to the country and an embarrassment to the conservative cause, without a doubt.
I agree with you. I was actually doing, I'm still, as you well know, still an Air Force reservist and chaplain, and I was actually on base this week. And it was really an interesting feeling being on one of our military bases with our fine men and women and seeing this happen, because, we've known what we have fought for the years to make sure that our democracy is what it is. And that this is something that was, as you just pointed out, there was no plan. There was no end result. It was just, let's go take selfies in the Senate or break down or harm somebody. And people died in this. And it's just, again, it does set us back. It does set back a conservative cause, because everything now is looked at over the past few years of the good things that we have been able to accomplish are now, unfortunately, being viewed in this prism.
You and I have both been strong supporters of the president. His policies have been remarkable, and his accomplishments have been stunningly important for the U.S. But, there are a lot of people are blaming him exclusively for what happened Wednesday. I don't blame him, but I think that his rhetoric certainly inflamed a lot of those passions that we saw Wednesday. What do you think the president could have, maybe should have done differently leading up to what we saw as that melee at the Capitol?
Well, it was not a good day for the president. The rally inflamed a lot of things that were going on. But no, I agree with you. It's not specifically just him. I think you had a situation in which people had no, as we just talked about, no end result of what was going on. But I think my concern was there was not quicker coming out and saying, stop this. There was not quicker coming out in the way that he has very much of an ability to do, to talk to people and say, let's stop this. This is not part of what we want to be a part of. This is not who we're about. This election process will go through legal means, as he said last night. In his Thursday night address, this is a process that is done legally, not illegally. And I would have wanted to see that come out a lot quicker, which didn't, which tended to, cause things to get worse.
All of the conversation about overturning the election in several states and trying to get Congress to do something seemed to overshadow what was a very important race in your state of Georgia. 2 Senate seats. We lost both of them. That gives the Democrats almost, a run of the table. How big an impact do you feel it had on voter turnout? Were Republicans discouraged? Did they just not want to go out and vote in a big way on Tuesday?
I think, unfortunately, Mike, I think that's what we saw. We saw in areas that Republican turnout did not match the November turnout that Democrats had in Democrat areas. And that's a concern. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, Georgia has a lot of election law stuff that needs to be fixed. And I want to be a part of that. And I'm working on some things that I think, we've talked about before, how we can get together and have good conservative solutions to election reform. People need to trust their elections. Georgia has a lot to deal with. But a January 5th election is very difficult coming through holidays. And then you add on top of that the mistrust of their vote counting or people thinking, and then you have people out there telling them not to go vote. As I said many times leading up to this election, if you really want the Democrats to win, if you wanted the Ossoff and Warnock to win, then stay at home. And unfortunately, it does appear that in areas where we could have had higher turnout, where we have seen higher turnout, they didn't come back out, and we lost a really fairly close election. But it is interesting, though, we did have one Republican, the PSC commissioner, Bubba McDonald, who you have met and know, actually won statewide. So I think there's a lot of dynamics here in this Senate race that we need to look at.
I was stunned that there were people telling Republican voters not to go vote, and supposedly they were doing it because they thought somehow that would help Trump. I don't get that. Was there ever any rational explanation for how that was going to somehow improve this great republic of ours?
No, I think it was just selfishness. I think it was put out there by people who were gaining attention, and how that, as you said, how would that actually help the president? I mean, we were looking at maintaining the Senate. We were already coming through a very difficult presidential race, which we now know Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be leading on January 20th. How is it going to help to have a Democrat Senate? It doesn't help at all, because everything that we've tried to fight for, the president fought for, is now at the mercy of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the Biden administration. That's just not good. We needed to have had at least one of these senators win. We didn't. Now we have to take an assessment back and go back and look at, what message are we giving as conservatives? Are we actually taking the time as conservatives to remember that we're the party of the individual, the person? We believe in people. We don't believe in government. We got away from our core message, and I think that's a problem that we got to deal with as well.
A lot of the controversy about the Georgia elections had to do with Governor Brian Kemp and the Secretary of State Rasberger. It's led to speculation that there will be a challenge in the primary to Governor Kemp in 2022. And quite frankly, a lot of that speculation centers around a guy named Doug Collins. Now, I'm not expecting you to tell me if you're going to run. I'm only asking because poll numbers show that you would win the election. Are you at least open to it? Is it something that you're considering?
Well, I'm considering all options at this point, Mike. I'm not ruling out anything. I think we've got a long time. We've got healing from this week to do. We've got healing in our state to do this, because it's going to come in a cycle. The governor and the Secretary of State have a lot to answer for about what happened last year, especially the Secretary of State in particular on the consent decrees, but it was agreed to by the governor and even the Attorney General. So there's a lot that needs to be answered. But I think going back to our very start of this conversation, let's make sure that we put this election in its proper perspective, in the ugliness of this week, so that we can get back to where we have a voice with people, to where they get back to what we've known. And for those of us who have been in the military, who've been overseas, who know what this country is like, we need to make sure that we are that shining light on the hill, that all of us come together. We have vast differences, and that's what the political process is for. It's not for everybody to agree. Differences are what matter in this country, but how we resolve those differences can never overshadow the democracy that we have. It can never resort to the violence that we've seen this week.
Well, if you decide to make a go of it, you're welcome to make the announcement right here on this show, so keep that in mind. Congressman, great to see you. I appreciate your friendship and your leadership. God bless, and I hope we have a much better 2021.
Well, we're looking forward to that, Mike. Thank you for all your support, and I look forward to being with you again many times.